Signal acquired. Welcome to the Borg Radio Hour with your host, Len No, transhuman international cybersecurity speaker, pen tester, and author. He will be your guide in navigating the human condition. Resistance isn't futile. There's no resistance, period.
Welcome back to the Borg Radio Hour. I'm your host, Len No, the human cyborg, and as I like to say, the ambassador to the biological units that are still out there. Today's guest is someone who has spent more than 2 decades studying how the human mind gets attacked, manipulated, and ultimately defended in this digital age. He is a former supervisory special agent with the FBI. I know the fact that I've got a Fed on here. Hey, where's my t-shirt? I found the Fed. He holds a PhD in cognition and cognitive neuroscience and has advised everyone from NASA to NATO's Cognitive Warfare Working Group. He is currently the executive director and co-founder of the Cognitive Security Institute, an organization built specifically to protect human, artificial, and hybrid cognition from the next generation of threats. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Matthew Canham. Matthew, I am so glad that we're finally going to get a chance to do this.
Me too, Len. I am so happy that we're doing this today, and thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, I want you to know you're like one of the very few, former feds or any type of law enforcement that I've had on so far. I'm not opposed to it, but I can already tell you that most of my people are just going to be like, is he turning? Is he turning? and the answer to that in a lot of ways is yeah, I am. And I'm not turning away from what I was, but I think that we're at a point in just humanity where we really need to kind of get some stuff together. And right now, the best minds are all, I don't care if you're a former Fed, a police officer, I don't care if you're a neuroscientist, a philosopher, or a therapist. We need to make some changes, and Matthew's going to be the one to help take us there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Let's start with the FBI stuff, because everybody likes the government work.
Sure. Well, I will say that I got involved in that on a little bit of a whim. I was recently minted PhD. I went into teaching and was just looking for something a little bit different, and so I went ahead and submitted an application. I don't think anyone was more surprised than myself when I was actually given an offer letter. I was given an offer letter to go to the FBI Academy at Quantico, and toward the later part of that experience, they were looking for cyber agents, and that's how I actually got involved in cybersecurity and the cybersecurity side of things. At the time, terrorism was still the thing that everyone really wanted to work on. This was around the 2009 time frame, so 9/11 was still very fresh on people's minds.
Remember those days.
Yeah, and I kind of weighed my options and thought, well, one of these is probably going to pay a little bit better when I get done with the FBI, and so I think I chose probably correctly on that regard. And one of the things I will say is that, so again, the FBI did a great job of training me. They sent me to several SANS courses. I learned a ton. I knew nothing going in. But I got out into the field, and the first case I ever worked in that area was business email compromise. And I thought, there is no way that this is going to be the majority of cases that I'll be working on, right? I'm going to be going after, Matthew Broderick, like war games type of stuff, and, because I had just studied all of the STANS courses and took the certifications. And, the first case I worked, the BEC case, I'll never forget it. It was a $4 million illegitimate transfer, and it had all the sophistication that you would expect an 8th grader to probably be able to pull off. It was somebody made a Gmail address in the CEO's name and waited until they saw that they'd posted on Facebook that they were in Mexico on vacation and said, hey, I can't send you this from my work account right now because I'm on vacation, but I need you to wire this $4 million to this account. And off it went.
God, that was like the recent Bangladesh version 1. It was actually a real person waiting there. But, it's so funny when you look at that from the perspective that it's the same attack that just took out, that bank in Hong Kong with all of the AI fakes. And it's the exact same thing. We did it years ago. We just keep repeating the same stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I love the hacking stories, but I want to hear how you finally went and applied that hacker cybersecurity methodology to figuring out the human layer and how that became into the play.
Well, that's a really good question. I think where I had been thinking about this as an investigator, but when you're an investigator, you're so much in the weeds, and you're just, and you've done incident response. It's just going from one thing to the next. You don't really have the time to kind of take a step back and think about things from a grander perspective. I went back into academia. I accepted a position with University of Central Florida with their behavioral cybersecurity program. And having that opportunity to go back into academia gave me that space that I needed to take a step back and kind of get the 50,000-foot view. What that did is it allowed me to marry a lot of the concepts that I had developed as a graduate student pursuing a PhD in cognitive neuroscience with a lot of the education I had gotten on information security, cybersecurity. And what I was seeing was a lot of overlap and nexus between these two fields. And I don't know that this is something that had gotten a lot of attention prior to the time that I really started focusing on this. And so I was looking at this right around 2017, and this was around the time that Rand Waltzman was testifying in front of Congress about cognitive security and the need for cognitive security. And also at this time, I was starting to develop what eventually became the Cognitive Attack Taxonomy, which was really looking at cognition as a form of information processing, and by conceiving of it as a form of information processing, now you can start to apply, I don't want to say the same models, but very, very similar models to hacking to cognitive processes. And that's where I think this starts to get scary.
I mean, well, everybody's heard the term that we're all just biological computers, most of my life. You guys just apparently found the cipher to be able to decrypt the human code, essentially.
We're working on it, yeah. I wouldn't say that we've cracked it yet, but we're getting there. One of the things that's very interesting about the time that we're living in, not only referring to augmented humans and some of the neurotechnology that's coming on board, but also a lot of the developments in AI, is that these things are really forcing us to understand what human cognition is at very, very fundamental levels. To say that someone knows something, you don't get a free pass in just saying that someone knows something anymore. You really have to be specific as to what that means, because I would argue that ChatGPT doesn't necessarily know anything, but it has a lot of information that it has access to, and in interacting with it, it really gives that feeling that it knows a lot. But on the other side of that argument is, what do humans know? How do we make that argument that we're not just statistically matching, in our own neural networks? And so I think this is really a very interesting time to be in this space.
Interesting and terrifying, if you ask me. But we're going to get more into that as we go along. So what was the specific moment or case, circumstance, and I'm taking a wild guess here, and I don't know this to be true, but when was the moment that CSI, or the Cognitive Security Institute, as it is better known as, when was the inception? Because I'm sure if we wanted to, you and I could just go back and forth for the next 45 minutes just telling, amazing story after amazing story, but we do really have a point that we want to get to people today. So, I mean, you were part of the FBI, you were advising these nation states. What made you say this isn't the way anymore? We need an independent, standalone entity that, I can pull in the brain trust that I need. I mean, the government has all the resources that you could imagine. What was the pivotal moment that created CSI?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say we initially formed in a very organic manner. It was just a bunch of interested parties getting together and meeting to talk about these issues that were coming up. And this happened shortly after the first NATO Cognitive Warfare Summit that I went to, which would have been November 2022 or so in Oslo. And we started meeting sort of informally after that. And a few months after we were having these regular meetings, it occurred to me that what we really needed was a non-governmental sort of organization or community. And that's when we really started to grow into what we are now today, which is really a community of practice. And the reason that that's so important is that I don't think anyone right now would disagree that we're in a very dynamic time with things changing very quickly. And in a time in history like what we're in right now, it's very, very important that we have organizations that are very fluid and dynamic and can adjust more or less on the fly. And that's exactly what CSI is. We are very, very flexible, and we're not constrained by the same bureaucracies that a lot of the governmental organizations or even international organizations are currently. And so that's what I think we really what our strength is, and then what we bring to the world is we have a community now of practice, as I mentioned, of a little over 1,000 members across 54 different countries. And so not only are we getting perspectives of practitioners and researchers, but we're also getting the perspective of different cultures in there as well. And I won't call anyone out specifically, but I've been having several dialogues with people from Brazil recently, and it is so interesting to me how Brazil has just latched on to this idea of neuro rights and neuroethics in a way that I haven't really seen any other areas of the globe embrace yet. And so this is where we really start to draw on the strengths of that diversity of opinions and perspectives and so forth.
That is awesome. I didn't realize it was that many countries, Well, I mean, I love to hear that. I hope it gets doubled by the end of the year, especially after the conference is coming up. So you guys have actually officially became CSI when?
I would have to get you the month, but I think it would have been March of 2023, and we incorporated, and then we became a 501c3 nonprofit organization in the United States.
What was that first 12 to 18 months like? Because and I'm going to throw one other name out there just because, we're both really good friends with Win. Win's been a guest of mine many times, and I kind of came to you guys through him and his concepts of the art and science of meta war. But I remember even in the beginning for me, I'm like, this is a lot to try and swallow. So I can only imagine. I mean, you said that it was basically a naturally occurring and growing organization. So I mean, did you have the normal startup issues that something like this would have?
Well, I don't know that we've outgrown those yet, honestly. Yeah.
Well, I'm on the chats. I've seen, the chat groups just explode to the point where, we have to subfractor certain, situations. But so, I mean, growth is there.
Yes. Absolutely. No, I mean, the growth is there. And I think that's probably been one of the least expected and most that's the area where I personally have grown the most over the last few years. Is I've taken this thing that I was just sort of informally managing. And now where we're at is we're actually formalizing processes, standard operating procedures. And I mean, 2 years ago it was me doing this, and now we've got a team of over 20 volunteers that are all doing different functions within the organization.
You evolved from going. It seems like it's kind of evolved from just an awareness thing to actually building more of a structural global backbone.
That's exactly what we're building right now, and I think one of the biggest challenges right now at this moment, as we're recording this, is I think we have a lot of potential, and in the next year or so, you're going to see that potential manifest in products that we're putting out there to the world. But we're in this really weird sort of valley where we got to cross this chasm to get all the pieces in place, so that we can then produce the things that we're producing, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Which leads me into one of my more tougher questions that I've got for you. You know, I've said before, I consider myself a part of the group. I'm a volunteer, and I love what you guys are doing. But, you know, if you look at y'all's roster, man, you guys are a little leaning in one direction. You know, and given, you know, the fact that many of the early leaders in the cognitive security space are actually coming from places like you with the FBI or some other intelligence agency, or most of them they have a law enforcement or some type of military background. How do we prevent what we're doing here and this new field that's being built from becoming just another tool for a narrative control or a censorship beacon, rather than, you know, actually being actual protection for us? I mean, you know, if you're laying the first bricks, you know, you're going to have that notoriety as the front runners. And if you get the belief, you have a lot of power, you know, over an influence, you know, which essentially is exactly what you're trying to prevent people from abusing.
Right. Yeah, I think that this is one of the most difficult challenges of our time, frankly, because you said it very well, that we're laying the foundational bricks right now for this going forward. And you know, make no mistake, the stakes here are extremely high. I mean, the provenance and control over your own thoughts and memory, I can't think of anything that's more sensitive than that, frankly.
I agree.
And that's where we're heading, because we're exploring and trying to understand those foundational building blocks. So the one thing I will say is that there, at least right now, are no easy answers. And I know that sounds like a little bit of a cop-out, but it's really one of the things that heading this organization has taught me is how to listen to different perspectives. And I will bring up one minorly controversial topic, which is age verification, right? And so I get it. Like, I understand why people want age verification. I mean, you and I are more aware than we want to be of some of the horrible stuff that is out there and that kids can be exposed to.
We know the evils that lurk in the hearts of men.
Absolutely. And so I don't dispute that, and I don't want to discredit in any way anyone who wants to prevent that from happening, because I 100% understand wanting to prevent that from happening. However, I don't remember who this quote comes from, but someone once said that there are no solutions, only trade-offs. And I think this is an excellent example of that. That
very good point.
Regardless of which side of this you fall on, there are going to be trade-offs. Yes, you might protect some children, but at the same time, you're going to seriously impose on the rights of people who want to just stay anonymous online. And I use that example that's more of a cyber context, but I do think that this is very applicable to the cognitive space as well. And And so as we're navigating these challenges, that is something I definitely keep at the forefront. I will say that for myself, I probably lean a little bit more individual rights, and yeah, yeah, yeah. So the other thing I will say just very quickly, and I want to emphasize, I'm not speaking for the FBI in any way, shape, or form when I say.
Oh no, trust me, they'll know if you did.
But when we started as new agents in new agent training, we swore an oath to the Constitution. We did not swear an oath to the President or Congress or the Supreme Court or any other entity. It was to the founding document.
The law of the land.
And you think about what you will of the Constitution, but it's really meant to protect individual rights first and foremost.
Preach.
Preach. Yeah. And so that is something, at least when I went through the academy, that was it was taken very, very seriously. And I mean, we had hours and hours of constitutional law. And, I'll confess, I'd never read the Constitution before that. Since then, I've read it several times. And I do believe that there is a lot there that can help us through the time that we're living in right now. That being said, I also think it probably needs some updates. There are a few things that were written for, an 18th century form of government, society, so on and so forth, and digital rights being one of those. The right.
I'm a staunch supporter of EFF. I was actually going to say, I'm hopefully somewhere in the future we can see some kind of a collaborative partnership between EFF and CSI. I think that's just a match made in whatever great place you want to believe in. But
I would very much like that, and actually we should talk to them. We're both going to be at B-Sides together, and
I think we should make that happen. I know a lot of good people over there. I'd love to make some introductions.
Cool.
But keeping moving the conversation coming forward, I'm going to take a minute because I do, as the outspoken transhuman that I am, your friendly neighbor. I'm not your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I'm your friendly neighborhood cyborg. One of the things that I thought would be a really good question for you is, when you're talking about cognition, and one of the things that I read in some of the CSI documentation was human plus artificial plus hybrid cognition. Mm-hmm. When we talk about hybrid cognition, how do we address the augmented humans? And I'm not speaking of myself because right now, currently, none of my chips have any input-output capabilities. But the concepts around brain-computer interfaces is definitely something that is on this is on the board. And, I'd love to bring up a gentleman by the name of Nolan Arbaugh. And for anyone that doesn't know who Nolan is, he was actually Neuralink's patient 1 and is currently the leading advocate for neural data privacy. And when we talk about, when it comes to, CSI's vision of protecting cognition, I think one of the ways that we can do that is by limiting the access to the abundant amounts of personally identifiable information and personally identifiable behavioral patterns. Well, what do we do with all of these new medical devices, BCIs? And I don't know if you've seen a lot of these newer sensors that they're actually looking at doing implants for that would be able to connect to a mobile device. And it's all done under the guise of, better communication between patient and doctor. But this is opening up an entirely new and in a lot of ways, if you ask me, more dangerous form of data harvesting. So, is this stuff on the radar for CSI as well?
Oh, 100%. In fact, two or 3 weeks ago, we actually had a couple of presenters from the Government Accountability Office, GAO, give a presentation on a report that they had put out about 6 months ago, I think, on security and privacy issues with brain-computer interfaces specifically. And one of the things that was very interesting that came out of that talk I didn't really anticipate is HIPAA, the Health Information Portability Act.
Everybody knows what HIPAA is. It's those 900 sheets of paper that they want you to sign every time you go to a doctor, a dentist, or anywhere where they're going to talk about anything that could be even remotely considered medical.
Exactly. So HIPAA will apply to data collected from neural devices depending on the reason that the data is collected. So if it's for a medical purpose, now it's covered by HIPAA. But if it's collected as part of a video game device, and there are 4 sensor EEGs that you can go out and get right now. The Muse is one, and there's a few others. Data collected under those circumstances, HIPAA does not attach. And I hadn't really put that together before they were giving the talk, but after hearing them explain it, it made sense as to why that is. The reason I bring that up is that that is a completely different set of protections and uses for that data, depending on why it was collected. And
one other one, if you hadn't heard about this yet, but Apple actually has a patent now that will actually allow for neural data collection from the AirPods.
Right. Yes.
And the wonderful way that my understanding that they got around that whole HIPAA concept was, this is your 900-page EULA, and somewhere in all of that fine print, it told you we're doing this.
Yeah. It reminds me of a South Park episode. But something that's very interesting in how some of these devices are being used in video games is that even with relatively crude devices that only have 4 sensors, it is possible to get indicators of being in a flow state. And a psychological flow state, for those who aren't familiar, this is a state in which someone becomes immersed into an experience to the point that they start to lose track of time and an awareness even of what's going on with outside. They're just totally immersed in the experience. Video game companies are very, very interested in what puts people into flow states and how to keep people in flow states. Well, if this is detectable through an EEG, your neural signals, now what can happen is you can dynamically adjust the difficulty of the game to keep someone in a flow state. And it basically will promote engagement in that game to where it becomes easier for someone to play for 20 or 30 hours straight without a break, because you essentially lose that sort of grasp on time. And so when you talk about augmentation, there's really a lot that can go under that umbrella of augmentation, right? Because in that case, what you're doing is you're augmenting the experience of an interaction with technology, and you're enhancing or augmenting that experience through the neural feedback. Something we didn't really touch on, I'm hoping that we will have a speaker on this at the conference actually, is pathogenic augmentation. And so like nanobots or maybe biological vectors that are injectable or consumable through other means to enhance or modify cognition. That stuff's here today.
Are you familiar with the genetic scientist Joe Zaner?
I've heard the name, but I can't.
They were considered the renegade bioscientists. They actually injected themselves with CRISPR on stage during a presentation. They actually run a business out of downtown Austin called the Odin, where they actually sell kits for doing home bioengineering, like creating your own glow-in-the-dark algae and stuff. Been trying to get them on the show forever. Hopefully, I'll get them. But I think they'd be an amazing, addition, because they're looked at as the same kind of light that I am, where they're They're reckless, but at the same time, there's a very fine line between reckless and pioneering.
Right.
And you can't really have one without the other. But you brought up the main point that, of why we're getting together today. So CSI is throwing a conference in Vegas during Hacker Summer Camp. First off, hats off to you for the machismo that, you're willing to try and throw yet another conference in that week. We've got Black Hat, we've got B-Sides, we've got all the shoot-off cons, we've got the DC cons, and here's the one. And I'm even going to say it right now. If you didn't know this is not going to be just like any other con to the listeners. This is a very, very limited opportunity engagement for the people that need this kind of information. 300 seats. So this is a very, very small, intimate gathering. So open the door here, man. Let's start off with, why would you do this? Why wouldn't you pick some time where, it's not flooded with these people? Or is that part of the allure, is it's all of us in one place at one time?
Well, it was really that we're all in one place at one time. And one of the unique values of CSI is that we bring together people from a lot of different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have former one percenters with government intel operatives, right? And how many places do you really see that kind of a mixture? And you're right, it's a very small, intimate sort of conference, but that is exactly what this community is all about. We could easily be 10,000 right now if we wanted to be, but we're very careful, and we curate who we allow into the community. And so this particular mix of folks, you're going to have people with an intel background, but you're also going to have just regular hackers. I expect some representation from the military PSYOP community, some of the cognitive warfare people, as well as people who hack AIs. You will be there. We have some people talking about brain-computer interfaces, and I'll tell you, we even have a few folks who are going to be talking about using prediction markets to alter society, as well as influencing social media behavior to manipulate financial markets. And so we're really looking at sort of the interconnection of systems, and that requires a lot of different perspectives. And so that's why we chose that time.
And I saw the lineup that you guys have put up on the website, which is the CognitiveSecurityInstitute.org. There is a separate page for the conference.
Yes.
And there's a spot right there on the main page where you can get to it. You've got me, Perry Carpenter, good friend of mine. Love having him on the show. It's the only time I was able to get Perry Carpenter, Taylor Swift, Nicolas Cage, and Elvis all on my show within the same 30 minutes. It was amazing. You got Brian Bushwood and the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Win Schwartau. And I heard his recent talk about 2 weeks ago. The only guy I know that can get away with, naming his talk, "No More Bullshit," and everybody just goes, yeah, let's do this. So, yeah. I mean, you got some power hitter talkers, and I think it's safe to say with this small of a crowd, the ability for anybody to get some individual time with any one of us is probably going to be very, very easy.
Well, and that's the other objective of keeping it small, right? Is you can go to Black Hat and see one of these speakers, but then they're whisked off stage, and good luck, catching up with them again at some other point. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely a time and a place for that type of convening, but we are really looking for that intimate sort of atmosphere where we're building this. We built the schedule earlier today, and one of the things we're deliberately engineering into the schedule, because we're using a lot of cognition as we're developing the schedule, is that after every talk there's a break. And so, right after the talk, you can go and you can hang out with the speaker for 15, 20 minutes or whatever that time of that break is, and not have to worry about missing the next talk or rushing off.
Oh, can you tell the DEF CON planning staff that move, please?
This was also inspired by prior experience at minicons. Yes.
Yeah, so, I agree. So I'm assuming at this point there's still a couple of tickets left. So
there is actually a little bit of breaking news today. Our hotel room block has gone away. We exceeded the amount of spaces that we had available for the hotel room block, so that's no longer available. We do still have some tickets. I do expect that we're going to sell out, though.
So that being said, here's the pitch that I want you to give to all of the listeners. Who is the person? Since there's these are not free tickets, by the way, so the people that are coming, they want to be there. But what's your pitch to the person who's like, I don't know if this is for me or not, I've got the money. Who's the person that should be coming to this?
Well, I think if you really want to see and engage with speakers rather than standing in line, this is the conference for you. And also, if you really want to understand this evolving field, this is also the conference for you. One of the things about cognitive security is that this is such a new concept. This is not human risk management redressed as a new flavor of the year or whatever.
And this is not just you up there trying to teach people how to be their own personal psychiatrists or psychologists.
Absolutely not. We're not a mental health organization, and that's not really where we're going. What we're really trying to understand is how this entirely new attack surface is evolving. And I will give you an example. A few months back, we had Ben Sawyer talking about some of the studies that he's doing with AI natives. And AI natives, people who have grown up with AI always present in their life, first of all, I'll say that AI to them is as threatening as electricity is to us that have grown up with electricity. And make no mistake, electricity is very, very dangerous. It kills thousands of people every year.
Absolutely.
But it's not magical to us. And that's very much how AI natives think about AI. It's not magical. It's just something that they've always known. And they have a very different relationship with it than probably you or I do. That opens up entirely new attack surfaces that we haven't even scratched the surface on yet. And so you were talking about these socio-technical systems or the human AI hybrid sort of systems. That is the sort of thing that we're diving into at the Cognitive Security Conference.
I think I want to just tell you right now, I'm honored and privileged to be even offered the opportunity to speak. I'll be, for everybody listening, I'll be actually delivering my Humanity 2.0 talk. So we're not going to be getting into any new crazy hacks that I'm doing. This is more right along the same lines as they're talking about, but it's a different way to look at the point that we are as humans. And I'll give everybody a teaser. Everybody knows that we're biological. Everybody knows that we have a digital footprint. But what we don't realize is that we've created another one that's completely algorithmic. Every time you've interacted with any piece of an AI, it's not just answering whatever you're putting into that chat prompt. There is so much being pulled out of that I don't necessarily think that any one single AI knows us better than ourselves, but collectively I start to question that. And that's my talk. So definitely, if that sounds like something that you're interested in, the CSI conference, I mean, hey, we're already in Vegas, man. Step away from the gambling tables, leave the bar, come fry your brain out on some really hardcore mental things that you will need to go back to the bar for and go gamble, because unfortunately, the one thing I will say, and being a part of the chats with CSI, I think this might be, in my opinion, the unofficial, motto of the group is you can't unring the bell.
Yeah.
Once you realize it and you see what's going on, you can't turn a blind eye to it anymore. So with that being said, we're coming up on time for today. So I do have 5 of questions that we call this the quick fire round. Just doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing, but hopefully this will kind of give people a little bit of a better idea about you and the conference itself. So what is currently the most dangerous cognitive attack vector that you think is out there?
Probably right now AI is the most dangerous.
Okay. What defensive capability do you think is most underrated right now from a cognitive perspective? I know what Win. I was going to say I know what Win would say. Lack of a bullshit meter.
Your critical ignoring.
Yeah, critical ignoring. That's what it is.
Yeah. No, I think mindfulness. There's a lot of pressure to react or respond to whatever it is that you're seeing nowadays, and I think actually the opposite is a much better approach, where it's like just taking something in, not responding to it, and just letting it kind of go past, and then thoughtfully responding, and yeah.
All right. What's the one single thing that keeps you up at night when it comes to everything that you're dealing with today?
Collapse of the nation state.
That's pretty heavy, man. And this is coming from a former government person. Okay. Did you ever see that shirt that says, "I'm the bomb tech"? Don't run unless you see me run. I think you're the bomb tech, and you just said you're not running, but we might be doing one of those, old people quick walks at the mall.
Yeah.
That's not cool, but honestly, the truth may not always be pretty, but the truth is always the truth. If every listener out there did one thing before your conference that would make you the happiest person alive, what would it be?
Buy a ticket.
We only got 300, man.
Well, but we want that.
My audience is not that small.
Well, we want as many people there that are interested in this that we can get, because again, having a unified audience is not necessarily helpful for us, because we just reinforce groupthink and confirmation bias and so on and so forth. What we really need are the diverse perspectives to kind of keep everything in check. So in all honesty, I would like to have as many different types of people getting tickets, coming to the conference, having these conversations as we can possibly get. Well, within the 300 limit.
Within the 300.
Yeah.
Maybe 600 next year. We'll see. We'll see. And if you have 30 seconds to explain what's the one thing about cognitive security that people need to understand today.
I think the most important thing to understand about cognitive security is that these attacks happen without you necessarily realizing that they're happening. And so the most effective attack feels like it's your own idea and that it came from you. But in fact, it was implanted by someone else. And I think it was Orson Scott Card, I think, said something about we question the beliefs except those that we hold most dear, which we never think to question. And that's the sort of manipulation that I think we really need to be careful about right now, because we're on such uneven sort of footing at the moment that it's really difficult to even know what our own perspective is on certain things, and we need to be very careful about that.
May I offer my own answer to that as well?
Please.
I think the one thing that people need to understand most about cognitive security is the fact that we need it. I think in a lot of ways, just that was a big ask for me when after reading Wynn's book and talking with you guys, was actually admitting the fact that I had been duped and that we need this. And that was a hard swallow for somebody who thought that they were a very intelligent, independent person. So I think accepting the fact that we need cognitive security is what I would love for people to see. So with that being said, Matthew, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm going to have all of the links to both the Cognitive Security Institute as well as the direct link to buy tickets in the description below. If you can't make the conference, look us up on LinkedIn. There are, hit the website. They're always looking for volunteers. With that, I would give you the offer to take us out.
Well, Len,
you can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Len, thank you so much for having me on the show today. I really can't tell you how much of an honor it is to be on here. And look, I'm really excited to be seeing you in Vegas here in a few short months. So.
Absolutely, man. With that, this episode of the Borg Radio Hour is over. Transmission ended. Till next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Out.
You've been listening to the Borg Radio Hour, where biology meets machine. Join the evolution. Until next time, we are the future. Stay safe, stay secure, stay sovereign, and most importantly, stay dangerous.